Hey, Den of Geek fans, Aaron Sagers here. It's New York Comic Con 2023. We're at the Den of Geek Studios, and I'm joined by this guy, the founder of Super7, Brian Flynn. Good to meet you, man.
It's nice meeting you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you because we haven't had a chance to meet before, but I feel like I know you very well through Super7. I love all the products that you guys release. And the tagline is, no one made it what we wanted to, so we made it ourselves.
Yep, that's pretty much it. That's the mantra. It's our excuse, if you will. It's like, well, no one else is making it. I guess we had to.
What was the item that as a kid you're like, well, why isn't this out there? Why can't I have this toy?
I think actually the very first thing is the actual first domestic licensed product that we ever made, which was the Super Shogun Stormtrooper. Mm-hmm. So as a kid, I had my 3 3/4 Star Wars figures, and I had 24-inch Shogun Warriors. My peanut butter and my chocolate never got a mix. I never got Reese's peanut butter cups there. And I wanted a Stormtrooper as big as a Shogun Warrior. And that was when we got back from doing licensing in Japan. And that was the first piece we ever made domestically. And that was what sort of set us off onto what you now know as Super7.
So what I like about it is that as a kid, it seemed like we could be collectors of a little bit of everything. You could have your Star Wars, you could have your G.I. Joe figures, your Transformers. You could kind of be this multi-tiered collector, and nobody really thought anything of it. Is that something that you now find with Super7 collectors now, that they're kind of cross-genre collectors?
For what we make, it's very much an emotional purchase, not a rational purchase. So everybody that's coming to us is bringing something from their history, something from their youth into what we're doing. And so I think as a kid, you kind of had what your parents bought you. It wasn't, you could direct them to a degree, but it might have been, this was what was on sale. This might, or this is what we found at Goodwill. It wasn't necessarily like, well, I only buy this line. The difference is, as adults, there's so many companies making so many great toys at a level of quality that's never been seen before, that you can be picky and choosy now. And now people can focus on a niche that they couldn't do in the past.
It seems like a lot of us that are doing this, these nerds that have gone pro, they're emerging out of like the 80s era of collecting and toys and everything. What was it about that era that kind of primed us for this golden age of all of these collectibles?
I don't know about you, but if we use Star Wars, I only saw it one time. So the rest of my interaction for Star Wars for the next 10 years of my life was only through the toys, possibly the Marvel comic or a coloring book or maybe a glass at Burger King or something. That was it. My experience was channeled through the plastic, which gave it an unnecessary emotional weight. Maybe not unnecessary, but a lovely. But if you're talking about G.I. Joe, you might have seen that only on Saturdays, or you saw it after school for half an hour. But if you played with the toys for 3 hours, you spent 6 times the time with your plastic than you did with the actual content. So your experience and your consuming of that came through the toys, and that's why the toys have so much resonance.
Yeah, like entire days embedded in, like entire afternoons, I remember, embedded in the world of G.I. Joe and Star Wars, and sometimes both, where they're mashing up with one another.
Oh yeah, you're totally. Snake Eyes is teaming up with a Stormtrooper to defeat Megatron. It's not a big deal.
With that in mind, with G.I. Joe, look, I was such a G.I. Joe nerd. There were few things that didn't exist in the collectible world that did exist in the TV series and the animated series, and you brought one of those things to life. And I have to say, it's a rather big thing that you've brought to life.
Yeah, the G.I. Joe Cobra Mothership. So for me, same thing. That first miniseries, the animated miniseries comes out, and it literally, yo, Joe, and then you see that giant mothership fly over, and it's a flying snake, and it's gigantic. Oh my God. It's like, it was the coolest part of that intro. That and Cobra Commander having to parachute out. But it kind of sat unrealized. And with G.I. Joe, they've done an amazing job over the years of pretty much making every vehicle ever. And it's the white whale. It's the vehicle that got away. So luckily, we convinced them to let us make it.
How many figures does it actually hold? Do you know offhand?
If you're talking about seats, there's 6. But in terms of how many you can fit in there, probably 40 or 50. I mean, it's a full playset inside this ship. It's almost 3 feet wide. And in any other line, this would be the biggest vehicle in the line. But because of the USS flag, I can't say that.
Did you have the flag as a kid?
But no, I didn't even know anybody that had a flag. It was mythical.
This is such a great topic of conversation, like the flag talk. Everybody knew a kid who might have the flag. Or
I never knew a kid that had the flag.
I never saw it in person, but I heard lore of it out there.
Oh, completely. You know this exists. Like, no way.
Yeah.
No way. Come on.
With the Mothership, so this comes not with 1 figure, but with 2?
Comes with 2, because every vehicle came with 1 figure. And obviously, we have scaled the Mothership to match our 3 3/4 reaction figures, which are loving tributes to vintage figures. But it's also backwards compatible to all of your 3 3/4 O-ring figures. So we're going to make an exclusive Viper Gunner figure, but it comes in both reaction and O-ring. So you can play with it either way.
Your Ultimates line, that's the G.I. Joe figures with that. You kind of take the glory of those original figures, and whereas the reaction figures are sort of the retro Valentine to the figures, Ultimates like pushes it forward, and we get a lot more detail, a lot more posability. These things are amazing.
Yeah, and the goal there is to make it look like it just walked out of the cartoon and onto your shelf. And I think we do a really good job of that.
Destro is one of my favorite figures. I mean, there's the Firefly, Destro. I guess maybe I like the bad guys. So, but with Destro, what's the deal with his shirt? Is that a shirt or an open chest?
Are you kidding? He's bronzed. He's just back from Milan. He's just like, hello, I'm Destro. He's Italian inside.
He's just rocking that open shirt, and the Ultimates figure has a nice little skull and crossbones medallion on him too, I think.
Well, you've got the medallion, or if the skull and crossbones, then you're dealing with Red Jackal from the UK Action Force line.
Now let's talk a little bit about the Budega set, because it's spooky season. I'm a spooky nerd, and you've got a lot of cool stuff that's happening in the setup, what the Budega line is, and then we'll go through a couple of these things.
Budega is our annual celebration of, like you said, all things spooky. It's our monster world. Like everybody else and every other toy company is ramping up for Christmas. How do we sell it to them? We're like, you can have Christmas. We want Halloween. Mm-hmm. And so Budega started out many, many years ago as a sort of pop-up shop that we did. Instead of being a corner bodega, we made a Budega because it was all monster themed. So it was a shop for monsters. And ever since then, we've just done every year. Budega is our big Halloween push. And it's just anything and everything. I get an excuse to make as much wacky monster stuff as I want. And people are like, oh, I'm in the mood for it right now.
We've got the Reagan figure, Exorcist, glow in the dark.
Yes.
Celebrating the 50th anniversary of The Exorcist. Looks like she's ready to spit out some pea soup and kind of float along.
We did an earlier one where it was half the card was just splattered in vomit.
Just splattered in vomit. I love it. That's why I love Super7 so much. Talk about some of the other items in this line, because we were chatting about this. We've got this Vincent Price figure.
Exactly. That's all you need. He's the voice in your head when you see any of this. Any horror thing, you can imagine Vincent Price doing the voiceover for it.
Yeah, this is not Vincent Price from House on Haunted Hill. This is Vincent Price.
You only need it to be Vincent Price. When he showed up on screen, you aren't like, oh, that's the Count. You're like, no, that's Vincent Price.
Yeah. Has there been figures like this where, like, am I just making this for me? I don't know if anybody else is going to be into this. And then it hits so big that you're like, okay, my tribe is out there.
Yeah, I mean, when we started making some of that, the one that we did that with was Hitchcock, because so much stuff is down around San Francisco where we're based out of. And we had come up with this design where it was the silhouette of Hitchcock, but it was all made out of birds as a T-shirt. So we went to get it licensed, and they're like, yeah, cool. And we're like, could we make a toy of Alfred? And they're like, yeah, sure. And we're like, I don't know if anybody's going to buy it, but people bought it. We did like 4 versions. I was like, oh my God, people bought Hitchcock. And that lends you to the same thing. Who are those icons? Who are those people you grew up in where they've almost become their own mascots, if you will? Yeah,
they've transcended like the show or the characters. And yeah, now everybody just knows them as those figures. And I think another one, I'm going to steal this from you and set it back down. I love this. I might actually literally try to steal this. The other one we've got is
Svengoolie. Exactly. Chicago comes to you. Horror. There you go. I mean, he's got a rubber chicken. What else? I mean, come on. What else do you need? There's a top hat and a rubber chicken. This guy's ready to party.
Horror movie host that I think now everybody knows. He was even in a DC Comics special edition with the Justice League, Svengoolie and the Justice League. So, and even the back on this is really nicely designed. The homage to the old horror comics, select this, mail away.
Exactly. This is definitely going to be vampire blood.
Anything else that you want to highlight from the Budega set that people need to check out?
I mean, my favorite are... This is one that I love. It's the soapies. So if you know, collecting monster toys pre-internet was difficult, and the holy grail were the 1960s Soakies, and especially for Creature. And then we took that line, redid it, and extended it. And then I made it in orange and black because that's Halloween. I mean, Creature's not orange, but this is where it's at.
And Creature happens to be my favorite.
He's everybody's favorite.
Is it? Well,
everybody wants to talk about Frankenstein and Dracula. It's always Creature.
It's always Creature. Just finally, Super7, looking ahead, what are some things that you still kind of want to do? Like, what's the big swing that you still want to take?
Man, there is so much stuff that we haven't even gotten started with and we're working on. I think we've got a lot of surprises in store for people coming up, some definite left turns that they aren't expecting, but that's the fun part where you're like, oh man, I didn't know I needed that. I need that. In fact, I need every version of that. That's really where we get excited.
I can confidently say I need whatever Super7 is delivering for me. So, all right, from New York Comic Con, Den of Geek Studios, Brian Flynn of Super7.
Thank you for having me, Aaron.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.